It's not about politics, it's about football.
This is a simple game.
We're going to run the ball, and we're going to pass the ball. We're just going to play football, really.
How good of a football player are you?
I just get it and try to spin it. That's all.
I just love the game.
It really is the best time of the year.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to It's Just Football. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That is Mike Renner joining you guys on a Wednesday morning as we dig deep into the NFL draft this morning. Mike, we're getting to go over some of your updated player rankings, which I'm excited. Every time walking around the office, going around the apartment, whatever, you're just sitting there on your laptop the whole time, updating the rankings, watching tape, getting to it, grinding. You got to feel good. This has got to be like your day to get to talk about some of what you've seen on tape.
Oh, yeah, because I obviously haven't gotten to really discuss any of this. All I've done is put out the rankings into kind of the ether and not really discussed it. So that's when it kind of really hits home, really sinks in, is when you start to dig deeper and really hammer it. So I'm excited.
We're going to get to not all the positions, but a lot of the premier positions, which include quarterback, pass rusher, offensive tackle, and a handful of other ones as well, some of the skill position guys. We'll get Mike's top 5 as it stands today, and also just talk about the class as a whole. So if you guys are into the NFL draft, this is, of course, the show for you. Obviously, we are coming to you on a Wednesday. Took yesterday's show off in respect to the Damar Hamlin situation and what happened on Monday night here in Cincinnati. And we just felt that was right? When you look at the tone of this show, what the show is kind of all about, yes, it's a community that we built with you guys, but out of respect for that situation and the severity of it, we didn't want to fake it here on this show. We wanted to be real about it, and we wanted to handle it with the severity that it deserved. And of course, our thoughts, our prayers, our love, not just yesterday when we took the show off, but today and for many days and however long it takes, we're sending to Damar Hamlin, his family, everyone who is affected by that situation, because it was so many. And of course, the NFL released a statement yesterday clarifying everything that they knew that they were able to say, basically saying that game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills was not going to resume this week. They said that Week 18 was going to go on as scheduled. We're not sure what they're going to do moving forward. They really only have, I think, a couple of days to kind of make that decision as we get to the weekend of Week 18. There's a couple of different scenarios. We don't really want to speculate too much on this show, of course, about Damar's health first and foremost, but also what the NFL is going to do. But we know that's going to happen within the next couple of days. So, Mike, just any thoughts there with any of the situation?
Yeah, there are some times where, you don't feel like joking around. The last 24 hours after Monday Night Football was definitely one of them, where it was just did not feel right to have a show yesterday. And, sometimes it just doesn't feel right to have a take or opinion on things like this. And this is just one of them. It's just a tragic situation. Our hearts go out to Damar Hamlin, his family, everyone impacted, that hopefully, hoping, praying, everything goes all right. He's obviously up the road here at UC Hospital. So that's where our minds and hearts are the past couple days.
What you see, they're not just saying this on the broadcast to make you feel better. One of the best trauma centers in the country. And so we know that he is getting fantastic care, some of the best care that there is in this country, being here in Cincinnati. So that gives us some solace, and of course, all the love sending going his way, his family's way, and everyone who's affected by this situation. So many, because we know that it has a major impact. This is not just players, but we've talked about this all the time. These are human beings. These are people's lives. And yeah, it's entertainment. We lose focus of it, but that was one of those moments where it's very humanized. So just sending all the love that we can to that situation as we kind of move forward here. I'll get the production portal guys into the show now. We got Eli, Saab, Quinn here with us. Fellas, how we doing on this Wednesday, on this draft Wednesday of the show?
It's good to be back. It's obviously we didn't deem it appropriate to have a show yesterday, but on Monday is when we were at Grail, so it's kind of been a minute since we've done a show here in the studio.
I thought about that. As I was walking to the studio, I was like, I feel like I haven't done this in like a week, and it has. It's been like 5 days.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody that came out to Holy Grail, man. Holy cow,
that was sick, and shout out to Holy Grail for letting us do that.
That was
packed.
That was the bar was completely packed.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't like, standing room only like it might be on like a degenerate Friday or a Saturday night, like when Mike's out there. But it was pretty packed. Every table was packed, and there was a lot of people listening to the show, a lot of people getting in on the show. So if you missed it on Monday, go back and watch it. But that was a lot of fun to do. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, it really was. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to do it again. The beer was flowing.
We definitely need a
wings at 11
fourth
a.m.
camera just to prove it next time.
That you guys were there, are you saying?
Well, that it was packed.
Okay.
Yeah, we're pretty good. Sal's pretty good with the sound bites throughout these episodes. Maybe he was like pumping in crowd noise. Maybe it was just us.
Shoot, could have been.
Shoot. That's not a bad idea. We should actually do that next time. Just like pump in the crowd noise, like whether there's people there or not.
Studio audience.
Like the Vikings do.
Right. Okay.
Shots fired.
Taking shots at the Vikings. There's the Packers in them coming out already early. Do we have a question of the day? Start us out here. What do we got here?
We sure do.
Okay, what do we got?
If the Packers beat the Lions and go to the postseason, how many times will Aaron Rodgers have reached the postseason as a starter for the Packers?
Good question.
If your Packers defeat the Detroit Lions, clinch postseason berth, how many times will Aaron Rodgers have reached the postseason as the team's full-time starter?
So didn't do it. First year of starting was 08.
Okay.
Didn't do it that year. Did it 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I believe. Missed 17, 18, made it 19, 20, 21, and then we'll see if they do it this year.
So how many is that?
I don't know. I didn't.
You sounded very confident there.
I'm pretty confident. I'm trying to think. 20.
We've got, all right, Brad saying.
So that's, 09.
Brad saying
10,
12,
11,
Pierce saying
12,
12,
13,
John saying 13, Philip saying 13,
16.
Zach saying 11, Jacob saying 16. It's not 16, it's too many.
I believe it's 11 then.
11. Zach might have been on the dot with the first guess of 11. The first correct guess of 11.
I think. Let me just do that one more time. 09, 10, 11, 12,
Matt
13,
said big
14,
if,
15,
and Jason said
16,
massive if.
Missed 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, I think it's 11.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Mike's official guess is 11. I'll be different. I'll say 10.
Okay.
Just because.
I think 12 was the year they went like 8-8, barely snuck in. He broke his collarbone year. Matt Flynn needed that, and then I think 13 was. What year was 13? 13 was when they lost to. What did they lose to in the playoffs in 13? I really can't think. 14 was the Seahawks NFC Championship game year. 15 was the Hail Mary year. 16 was NFC Championship game against the Falcons.
Out here.
When they that was the relaxed year, and then I believe 17, 18 was like the two McCarthy years that were tough, and why he ended up going. 19 was his full-time starter. He may not have started all the games. So 12 is the year that he may not have started the majority of the team's games.
Oh, I'm changing my answer to 9.
So it could be 10 then, technically there. I'm trying to think, how many did he start that year? Yeah, I may not technically have started all the. So
no,
maybe
I'm sticking with 10. That was my original guess. I'm sticking with 10.
That's the team's full-time starter. That's.
Now, you can't guess 10. I already guessed 10.
He was their starter, though.
Nah, you get it. Can't.
If that's a trick question, I feel duped.
I'm going to say 10 if I get it right.
It's not a trick question.
Then I knew all along.
This is a real question.
The Buzzard
Yeah.
says, who cares?
Yeah.
I think Buzzard's a Lions fan. Yeah. So he doesn't want to, they don't want to hear this.
Are we saying 13 was the 49ers divisional game? What was the, okay, it was back-to-back 49ers years then. That was tough.
I'm going 10.
Tough season. I was at that stupid one, the field goal one. I was at the field goal one.
I can feel the emotion in the stupid one.
12 was the one they got boat raced. Okay, 12 was when they got boat raced. That's when the 49ers made the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. 13 was when that was at home. They lost on the field goal at the end. Okay. All right. Yeah, I feel good.
About how many?
So then 13 was the
about how many?
One. 11. So I think it's 11.
I'm sticking with 10. Yeah. And I hope it's a trick question. Quinn, I'll give you $5 afterwards if you fudge this and make me right on a Packers question. I mean, I'll get it to you in payment installments. Obviously, I can't give you $5 all at once. I'm not made of money, but it will be there.
Thank you.
But it will be there. All right, let's take it to the NFL draft. We talked about how this is going to be a topic of conversation on this show. You guys have come to love the fact that we talk a lot of NFL draft on Wednesdays, and we're doing player rankings. We've done mock drafts before. We've done, taking a look at the top 10, the top 20 order. We're getting close to solidifying this bad boy. Only got 1 week left in the regular season, so all of the non-playoff teams are about to be locked in a week from now. So we will have plenty to talk about then as we get to the final order next Wednesday. But before we get to that, let's talk about some player rankings. Let's talk about how you see them. And, of course, let's start this off with the position that everybody wants to talk about. It's the quarterback position.
Let's do it.
Let's throw up your top 5 quarterbacks as of right now for the 2023 NFL draft. You got Bryce Young at 1. You got Will Levis at 2. Interested to have a conversation there as C.J. Stroud closed that gap a little bit if you thought sloping it after this Saturday. So Stroud's at 3, Anthony Richardson's at 4, and then your guy Tanner McKee is at number 5. We'll just start with Will Levis. You having him at number 2 overall, or not number 2 overall, but number 2 in this quarterback rankings. Where's the gap between Levis and Bryce Young? And then where's the gap between Levis and Stroud?
So I think the gap between Levis and Bryce Young is bigger, quite a bit bigger. Like bigger than the gap between Levis and even like Anthony Richardson.
Oh, okay.
Or even like McKee in this class. Like I feel great about Bryce Young. I don't know if you watched the game at all over the weekend, but what he did at Kansas State was just what he's done pretty much over the course of his career. When he's big moments, Bryce Young's been showing up. And obviously it took him not having his top 2 wide receivers in the national championship game to even look like a human against Georgia. But we saw in the SEC championship game that just he dominated what was an NFL defense. That was as good a defense as we've seen in college football over the past handful of years. I think the stat I had in an article the other day was Georgia last season against opposing quarterbacks had a 53.0 passing grade against Georgia last season. Bryce Young had a grade over 90 against Georgia last season. Like he was dominating between those 2 games.
Right.
An NFL caliber defense. And when you do that, now there are going to be things to his profile, obviously the size, that are going to matter at the NFL level. There's a reason why he drops deeper and sits in the back of the pocket more so than, say, a Will Levis does, than an Anthony Richardson does. Like, it is difficult to see over the line when you are at that height. Drew Brees has said he used to take his dropbacks on his toes as high as he could just to get that little extra piece to see the defense when you are dropping back, when you are 6 foot, or maybe even Bryce Young, say, smaller than 6 foot quarterback. So it does matter. Will impact his game at the next level. But he is where it impacts your game, where it sort of comes into play is seeing the middle of the field, as I just said with like Drew Brees. Bryce Young is graded out better over the middle of the field than any quarterback in this draft class. Like he has been excellent in that regard. So at that point, at the end of the day, yeah, it might put some limitations on him, but he has other aspects to his game that are just uncoachable. I mean, I think he gives you a floor that's still very, very high.
Yeah, no, I agree. When you watch Bryce Young and the success that he's had against some of the best defenses in the SEC and the best defense maybe we've seen in college football over the last decade or so in the Georgia Bulldogs last year and even Georgia this year. Really great defense. It performed so well, graded out incredibly well. The success that we see it on the scoreboard, on the stat sheet, and the grading profiles and the advanced stats, like everything. Bryce Young just grades out very, very well in every area other than measurables. But quarterback position is one that is so much between the ears and what you see. And Bryce Young sees that. Feels like better than anybody else. So let's move on then to Levis and Stroud. I want a little bit of a debate here. You talked about this a little, and I'm wondering how much weight you give this past game for C.J. Stroud, because C.J. Stroud this season under pressure before this past weekend, 38 PFF grade, one of the lowest grades under pressure that we had in the country. This past weekend against Georgia, 82.6. An incredibly high grade under pressure for a quarterback there. How much did last week's game for C.J. Stroud go into where he would be on these rankings and what you think of him as a quarterback?
I truthfully think it was huge. It was the best game he's played in his career. Like that was the best tape. That if you're going to point to any for C.J. Stroud, it was that. Now there are still aspects of it that, Ohio State's offensive line, the way they scheme up is still very advantageous for quarterbacks. He still is dealing with some of the best talent around him, but when things broke down, when it did get tough, that was the best he's looked at any point in his career, as you alluded to there. Like he was under pressure 19 dropbacks in that game. Was never under pressure more than 12 dropbacks in any other game this season. So like you saw, and 19 dropbacks is like, that's what it's going to look like at times in the NFL. He's going to have to do that. And proving that under pressure against a defense like Georgia, huge for his draft stock. Now, from a tools perspective, yes, he can run, but I don't think he is nimble and elusive in the pocket. Like that's never going to be his game. You get him out in space, sure, he can pick up a first down, but that's never going to be a big part of his game. I still do worry about the arm strength is middling by NFL standards. I think just in the, if you put together the 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now, line him up in terms of arm strength, he is below average in that regard. He would be below 16th. He would be somewhere in like the low 20s if you put him on the NFL roster next season, whereas I think Young has a stronger arm. I know Levis has a stronger arm. I know Anthony Richardson has a stronger arm. I think Tanner McKee has a little bit stronger of an arm. So he's, of these top 5 QBs, he probably has the weakest, maybe like pure physical skill set. But damn, he's accurate. Damn, he's good from the pocket. And I think he plays the game a lot differently. Like a lot of the concerns we have with Fields that have reared their head in the passing game, I don't necessarily have with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, so we're asking in the chat, would you rather have like Stroud or Levis as your QB2? A lot of people overwhelmingly saying Stroud, but Jason's saying, hey, I like Levis over Stroud due to the higher ceiling, and then Daniel echoed that as well. Stroud feels like the higher floor prospect. Levis feels like the higher ceiling. Is that an arm talent thing, kind of what you were talking about there? Is that the biggest reason?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think that's a fair descriptor. Although I'm not even sure. Floor with a quarterback is always difficult to, I'd say, pinpoint because of how different the game gets played at the collegiate level versus the NFL, and just how different it's going to be for all these guys. So floor is always hard to discern, but I would agree that Levis, his ceiling, his ability as just an athlete is unique, and that's why he gets that spot on the PFF board.
I do want to ask you a little bit about Anthony Richardson and your thoughts overall after watching a couple of games of him. You got him at number 4. He's such a polarizing prospect, right? I think anytime you even throw Richardson's name in a mock draft, you will see both ends of the spectrum about as far as you can. People will say, how in the world could you ever put Anthony Richardson in the first round of a mock draft? And then you'll have other people go, how in the world do you not look at Anthony Richardson and think that he's not going to go higher in a mock draft? So it's like, okay, well, those are extremely different takes. But I think the play, if you're not really examining it, warrants it when people have watched it live. So you watched a lot of Anthony Richardson. What do you think about him right now?
I'm a big fan of Anthony Richardson. Truthfully, if I'm a team drafting at the back end of the top 10, someone like, the Panthers or whatever, the Falcons, where it's, and maybe not necessarily Falcons with Ritter and whatnot, but like someone there who wants a quarterback, and it's the decision is trade up draft capital to go get a Will Levis or a CJ Stroud in the top 5. Jump someone at 3 or 4, or just stand pat. Don't maybe mortgage a future first rounder or a second and a third or whatever it's going to take to go up. And just drafting Anthony Richardson, I think it's close enough that I'm just going to stand pat drafting Anthony Richardson because of how special he is athletically. I mean, he is a sudden athlete for 6'4", 240. He outruns DBs when he gets up to top speed. It really is. And that to me is how high floor. Like that gives you, if you can run the way Anthony Richardson can run, at the very minimum, you will be a big value add. You will be a game changer for the rushing offense to whichever NFL team you go to. So that gives you a little bit of a floor. So from that perspective, he has it. Now, a long way to go, but I think his footwork and his ability to work from the pocket, ability to work under pressure, is a far cry from a guy who probably had a similar strengths and weaknesses profile in Malik Willis last year, where it's like, oh yeah, he's inaccurate, needs to improve necessarily from the pocket, needs to, do more sort of NFL things, shall we say. I think Richardson already does a lot of NFL things and what he's going to be asked to do at the NFL level as quarterback in the drop back passing game.
Yeah, I think there's less, the way that I put it on the NFL Stock Exchange podcast was there's less imagination with Richardson than there was with Malik Willis. Because I felt like with Malik Willis, you were saying a lot of the same things, like not you personally, we all, a lot of people were saying
the same take.
Same take, where it's like, okay, he's not where he needs to be as a passer yet. He's got to get things cleaned up. He's got to be more comfortable in the pocket, all that kinds of things. And we didn't really see it a ton with Malik Willis. It was kind of like, okay, if you do this, this is what it could look like. Yeah. With Richardson, we've seen what it looks like. We just haven't seen it enough. It's just not consistent. It's not that it doesn't exist. Yeah. It's just not consistent, which is maybe the same points of conversation, but it's a different conversation and a tone of it. So that's what I would say with Richardson.
And Richardson, the other thing to keep in mind, redshirt sophomore. Barely over a season played.
Right.
Malik Willis, redshirt senior, played a ton of football already. It's like, that's why it was surprising to me that he came out, because this guy and his ability, if he makes those necessary changes, is a number 1 overall pick type of guy.
Yeah.
That's what you're working with from a tools perspective. But in this class, and maybe he saw next year's draft class too with the guys like Drake May and Caleb Williams, is like, hey, am I going to jump those guys too? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'm still going to be on the outside looking in. So what's the difference between drafted somewhere in the, maybe 8 to 20 range in this year's draft, which where I believe he will come off the board, rather than the 3 to 5 range if he came back and balled out next year. So.
Yeah, and I also think, you bring up a great point. He declared you view what the quarterback class could be next year. I don't think Anthony Richardson would have declared for the draft if he got anything less than like a first-round grade. Mm-hmm. I think the NFL Draft Advisory Board or what agents were telling him or whatever were like, hey, you're going to get picked in the first round. Like, it's a no-brainer. Someone's going to take you with a top 32 pick. So for a lot of people, we asked in the chat, hey, would you take Anthony Richardson, or do you think Anthony Richardson's going to be a first-round pick? A lot of people were saying no, wouldn't take him that high, but he is going that high, right? TJ said that, and a lot of people agreed with it. But I just think that that's the reality of the situation.
And I would take Richardson that high if he said he wanted to be a tight end tomorrow. Like that's the caliber of athlete we're dealing with. Again, like
athletic.
You watch him move, whatever it is, whatever he's doing, whether it's like moving in the pocket, whether it's running out in space, whether it's eluding a defender, he's a high-end athlete. Like it is. He moves like a Kyle Pitts moves. Kyle Pitts goes top 5 because of that. Now, obviously, there'd be a learning curve to the position, but I think we've seen at something like tight end that it's very athletically based, and Antonio Gates, guys of that nature that just are athletes that end up playing the position can succeed there. So if Anthony Richardson wanted to play tight end, I would draft him in the first round tomorrow.
TJ said Richardson should be a luxury second-round pick, but that's not how GMs think. Well, unfortunately, when you look at a guy with that high of a ceiling and you know that it can mean the entire world for your franchise, sometimes you just don't have that luxury. It's like, are we going to be okay with ourselves if we don't get Anthony Richardson and we just say, but we stuck to our grades on it. And meanwhile, he balls out and maybe becomes a great starter somewhere else in the team. That's just not how it works. So you know that GMs, as TJ said, are going to have to take that risk.
And I think it also, like, if you're saying, you don't want to draft him in the first round, you're kind of ignoring just the historic rate of first-round picks, right? You're at best in the 50% range on first-rounders turning into quality starters for the team. So it's not like you're, if I don't draft Anthony Richardson in the first round, I got a surefire stud.
Right.
It's like you're drafting Anthony Richardson in the first round.
It's a risk no matter what.
Because, exactly.
It's a risk no matter what. And so
none of these guys say,
if you need one, you'd rather take the risk on the position that if it hits at the highest level with a high ceiling, could mean all the difference in the world, right? So you've got Tanner McKee at 5. You don't have to go too much into Tanner McKee, but I basically wanted to ask you, you've got these 5 guys here. Is the quarterback class really that deep after this? We've got Hendon Hooker in this class, like a Jake Haener's in this class, like Jaron Hall could be in this class, right? Like you've got those kinds of guys, but is anyone really moving the needle after these top 5? Bo Nix is going back to school, so he's not in this one. We thought he might be, but
it would not surprise me after this top 5 if we did not see another quarterback until day 3. And unfortunate for Hendon Hooker because he looked great this season, has made massive strides, but you are getting a 25-year-old rookie with a torn ACL if you draft a Hendon Hooker. That's just a bad starting point. I don't care who you are. And it's not like his game was slam dunk top 10 pick either. It was like, he's had a nice year, like fringe top 50 sort of guy on most people's boards because of that Tennessee offense being so gimmicky and what he's asked to do there. So, Hendon Hooker, QB6 here in this class. Obviously, because you said Bo Nix comes back to school, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's not even a top 100 pick.
It sucks. He was having such an incredible year. It's just a bummer, but it might be the reality. Let's move on to running backs. All right, your top 5 running backs. You got Bijan Robinson, obviously at Texas. That was a layup there. You got Blake Corum at RB2. You got Zach Charbonnet from UCLA as RB3. Jahmyr Gibbs is RB4. Sean Tucker, RB5. Charbonnet at 3. Talk to me about him. What do we love about Charbonnet?
This running back class, probably more so than any position in this draft, after 1, Bijan's going to be 1 on. If you have anyone other than Bijan, I question.
How do you think he's going?
I think he goes somewhere. I think he goes top 20 at worst. Could even sneak into the top 10.
I genuinely think that there's a good chance he goes top 10.
Yeah. Okay.
I really do think that some team in the NFL is going to want to take this guy.
He's special, right? Like we say, say this guy's different, that guy's different. Bijan's different. Bijan, Saquon Barkley level, Adrian Peterson
Christian
level, Christian McCaffrey level, where it's like, can't coach that movement. You just can't. It's different.
And he brings so much plus in the passing game, too. He's such a great receiver.
Complete right.
He is. Yeah.
So he's 1. But then after that, you could see the 2 through 8 or so on this list. There's going to be a lot of similar names, but the order of them is going to be all over the map. I trend towards a guy like Blake Corum purely because of projectability. 5'8", 210 is perfect size for running back in the NFL. That is Maurice Jones true. You look at this guy, like that is the contact balance he shows in college, the elusiveness he's shown. I mean, he made Jack Campbell, the Iowa linebacker, fall, broke his ankles in the hole, didn't even touch him one-on-one because he has that kind of suddenness and shiftiness because he's built so low to the earth. Those guys succeed more often than not at the NFL level. So that's why I like Corum. He also just had, the highest PFF grade at the collegiate level of any running back we've graded in our 9 years now. So that also helps.
He did end up with number 1?
Yes.
That's
so
crazy.
That helps too. But just has that. I think he has good speed as well. A lot of home runs on his tape. So big fan of him just for the projectability aspect. Whereas someone like Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama is probably a better receiver, a little faster, more of a home run threat, but he's 200 pounds, slightly over 200, not going to be your bell cow type of running back at like 5'11". So that's why I have them the way I do. Zach Charbonnet as well, 6'1", 220. If you take all the measurables of the 1,000-yard running backs a year ago in the NFL, the average height and weight of them was 6 foot, 220. Those are the guys that again, the projectable NFL bodies that succeed at the next level. And Zach Charbonnet has had a top 3 rushing grade in 2021, had a top 3 rushing grade in 2022. He's just been extremely elusive. Contact balance is great. Maybe not the best home run speed on this list of those top 5 backs. He's probably the slowest, but even at the slowest, he's probably in the mid 4.5s. I think he's faster than someone like a Javonte Williams even, coming out of North Carolina, who was a top 45 pick. So, big fan of his game, and again, the projectability aspect there to it. But a big fan of Jahmyr Gibbs' game too. He's the best receiving back in this class. I think he is electric in the open field. Maybe a little too boomer bust as a runner, but that's what's winning in the NFL today. You look at a lot of the better backs around the league. They are the Aaron Joneses, the Tony Pollards, even Dalvin Cooks. Maybe they're not the biggest, but everyone has to account for that home run threat when they're in the backfield. And that's how I feel about Sean Tucker too. He may run the 4.3s, maybe in the low 4.3s. That guy in the open field, no one hawks him down. He is a freak in that regard. Very much a straight line runner though. One cut, that's where I feel good about the top 4, but at number 5 is where a ton of guys start to come into the mix, whether it's Tank Bigsby from Auburn.
I like Tank a lot.
Which I like a lot. Whether it's Kendre Miller from TCU. There is a lot of running backs after those top 4 that's you can convince me that guy's probably the 5th best running back in this class. Even like Devin Achane, who we haven't even said, who is very much, a home run threat. Maybe around the 4.2s, the Texas A&M running back, but it's a loaded running back class. After Bijan, I'd be surprised if one goes in the first round just because of the sheer fact that the difference between the guy you're going to draft in the first round and the guy you could probably get at the end of the second or even the end of the third may not be that massive.
Yeah, there's people in the chat, and I want to shout this out. It said, Blake Corum has not declared for the draft yet, and that is true. Blake Corum could come back. I would
be surprised.
Strongly tell him that he should go because I think that he's going to be one of the top 5 backs drafted. And anytime that's the case, you rehab. Obviously, you can start your NFL career a little bit earlier, less hits that you got to take, and you already proved it, right? I mean, there's nothing that Corum has yet to prove unless he really feels like they're going to win a national championship next year and he really wants to do that. Yeah. I mean, like you said, he was unbelievable this season.
He's transferred to Notre Dame, then.
This is his first season as the RB1 in this class. They've obviously got Donovan Edwards, so that, you're going to split time with Donovan Edwards again next year, even if he comes back. So I think Corum's going to be in the draft class when it's all said and done. But this running back class is really good. I mean, I'm a big fan of Tank Bigsby as well. You didn't have him in your top 5 as of right now. I do have him on my top 5. Going into the year, I felt like he kind of had balance issues. There was so much to like about him. He had the size, he had the strength, he had the long speed, but it was going into this year, I remember watching tape of him the year before, and I was like, how is he losing his balance so much? He just did not have good balance. I'm like, all right, can't pick up yards if you're on the ground. This year, I didn't see that nearly as much. Instead, I saw a much more comfortable and confident runner, and so you instead get a lot of those athletic tools that everybody sees there. So I would definitely put Tank Bigsby into this group too, but it is another really strong running back class. And does the depth of this running back class almost hurt it, cannibalize it in a way where you mentioned Bijan goes first round, but I think it was yesterday, he was going around the timeline, or maybe it was the day before, Jahmyr Gibbs, a report came out, it might have been from him specifically, where he's like, I got something back from the draft advisory board. I was going to be picked somewhere between 20-25. That's what they're thinking, late first round from Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think it's a little high, but when you play at Alabama, you have the dynamic ability that he does. He seems to think he's going to be a back end of the first round guy, but you don't see that?
I just would be surprised, right? Because, as we said, if you draft him, pick 25, and you're drafting somewhere at the back end of the second round too, you may have a guy on the board at the back end of the second round. You may have a Tank Bigsby on the board at the back end of the second round who, they're a little bit different types of backs, but you can do the same thing, similar things with both those guys, and it's man, the difference at that position, the running back position, is just going to be less outside of a guy like Bijan Robinson than other positions, in my opinion.
Walt shouting out Chase Brown too. Led the country in rushing yards. Chase Brown was awesome this year. Very few players, I would say, made as much money this season.
Hot take on Chase Brown. His brother,
like Chase Brown did.
Sidney Brown,
yes,
will get drafted higher.
Oh,
You will. Safety. Freak athlete. Yeah, you will.
We don't have safeties on here, so that's a good shout out. That was a good shout out there from you. All right, let's move on to wide receiver. Stay on offense here. We'll round out offense with wide receivers. You got Quinn Johnson, who I say with a smile on my face, I can't believe we get another game of Quinn Johnson. I cannot believe that we get to see Quinn Johnson play in an actual championship. It's been an awesome season. We went into the year, I think the most receiving yards that he had going into this year was 650, something around there. And we were just like, all right, well, this guy doesn't get a lot of volume. This year he's got over 1,000 yards for the first time because they're actually feeding him, because that offense is as potent as it has been. And they're playing in the final game of the college football season because of it, which is really cool. Zay Flowers, number 2. Wide receiver 2. I like Zay Flowers, but I want to hear a little bit more about this. Then you got Addison from USC, the former Biletnikoff winner at number 3. Your guy, who I know you like a lot, Josh Downs at number 4, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 5. Talk to me about Quentin Johnston first.
Oh, I'm excited to.
With him being wide receiver 1 in this class, what's the ceiling? Do you think he has a potential to crack the top 10? Do you think his scouting profile is going to say that he can be a top 10 pick as a wide receiver 1 in this class, or what do you think?
Yes. Oh, 100% yes.
Okay.
I'm very glad that the world got to see a game of Quentin Johnston where he got featured over the weekend, because they finally got to see that this guy is a different breed altogether. In terms of just physical talent, he's right up there with anyone we've seen in the past decade. He's 6'4", 215, going to run low 4.4s, I would imagine maybe high 4.3s. Going to jump over 40 inches in the vertical. Like, he is truly on a different caliber of athlete. Like, as ticks all those boxes wholesale that you want to see. Now, route running, all that sort of stuff, he is not by no means close to what we saw from last year's class coming out. The top guys, what we were seeing with Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, those guys were route runners already coming out, ran a full route tree. Quentin Johnston, you're seeing him run slants, you're seeing him run goes, comebacks, whatnot. Limited. It is limited in that TCU offense. They line him up at left wide receiver. He's kind of just a lot of times a decoy in that offense that other defenses have to account for. They know where he's going to be. They have to put a safety to that side, and the TCU schemes away from him because they know they're going to have maybe a numbers advantage, because Quinn Johnson is that difficult to basically account for one-on-one. So I think he goes top 10 because of that ability. I'm not saying he's going to hit the ground running as a rookie and look like what we've seen from this past year's class because of that, but what he could be is truly special. So he's wide receiver 1 because of that. And then 2 through 5 is really all up in the air. Those guys are another position where it's very interchangeable, all very close grades, all going to be very close in the PFF draft board. But I like Zay Flowers because he's the most athletic of that bunch. I mean, he is that different caliber of movement skills, almost like a Jalen Waddle light in what he brings to the table coming out. I think Waddle's a little more physical, maybe just a little bit better acceleration, whereas Flowers maybe a little more agile, maybe a little more nimble. You see him run like whip routes, option routes, and he's open all day, every day. So if you're putting him in the slot in your offense, you can easily feature him in a Hunter Renfrow type of role, in a Cooper Kupp type of role, and be very happy about the early returns from him. He is the best pure separator in this draft class. And then 3 through 5 is where it gets really interesting to me, because a lot of similar body types, a lot of but different skill sets. I think Jordan Addison is a true outside type of wide receiver, a true separator, but iffy ball skills, iffy play strength, but the best pure kind of outside separator in this draft class. A guy who kind of belongs in the same conversation as someone like a Chris Olave, someone like a Garrett Wilson from last year. It's like that's the kind of game you're getting from a Jordan Addison, whereas Josh Downs is, I think, purely a slot guy, because I question maybe his deep, long speed, probably going to run maybe high 4.4s, low 4.5s. He's not that pure guy, but he is very elusive, very shifty as a route runner. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba has like legitimately not great long speed. Wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't even crack 4.6 in the 40, although he obviously has hopefully a hamstring. Hopefully hamstring's healthy. We'll see if he even runs a 40. May not even crack like 35 inches in the vertical. He is not a go up and get it type of wide receiver. Purely a ground game, purely a slot wide receiver. but understands better how to get open than anyone in this draft class, more physical at the catch point than anyone in this draft class, exceptional ball skills, really understands the nuance of the position, one of the highest floors of this wide receiver class, Jack Smith-Njigba, but it is just like a one-role kind of guy. And so that's maybe the worry with the Jack Smith-Njigba, but I don't love this wide receiver class, but I think all 5 of those guys are going to make an impact at the NFL level.
It may not be a star-studded at the very top like last year's class was, but there's plenty of shapes and sizes, types and roles of wide receivers that you can get throughout the draft. It's funny, I'm looking in the chat now as you're talking about Quentin Johnson and everything that he can do. We've got the triple threat Clemson wide receiver. Somebody compared him to Mike Williams, somebody compared him to T. Higgins, somebody compared him to DeAndre Hopkins. So it's just like the Clemson line.
It's just the dreads.
It might be. The height, the weight, the hairstyle might be why. Walt says Johnson could be like Calvin Johnson, which is that's high praise.
I mean, but that's similar. Calvin Johnson's one of one, but that's like where we're talking about athletically. Like over the past decade, I'm really trying to think of guys who were he's not caliber.
Athletic, though.
Yeah, I mean, like Christian Watson was an absurd athlete coming out last year, but Quentin Johnson's like stronger. And the thing I didn't even mention about Quentin Johnson is just after the catch is what we saw. That's the part of his game that's like truly special. He's like a almost bigger Deebo Samuel in that regard, in that I think he's broken 43 tackles on 108 catches in his career, which, again, I think the only wide receiver who has broken tackles to that degree is Deebo Samuel in the collegiate level. Like it is special what he can do with the ball in his hands.
All right, let's go over to defense. Let's talk about edge rushers. This again feels like a deep class for edge rushers. If you need defensive linemen, there's going to be some good ones to get. You, of course, have Will Anderson at the number 1 ranking here in this class. You've got Myles Murphy at number 2, Jared Verse at 3, Tyree Wilson at 4, Nolan Smith coming up in the rear at number 5 in these rankings. Well, Will Anderson at 1. Do you have any concerns about him whatsoever with the lightweight of him, or are you cool with it?
Not really. It's just how he moves is, I think I said this before in the show, the guys that move like that at that size, 6'4", 240 range, it's Khalil Mack, it's Von Miller over the past 10 years. That's it. And then those guys, it doesn't take much when you are that freaky to make a massive impact at the next level. And as you see, like, he's already made a massive impact. And he's a guy that, again, at that size, he doesn't come off the field. He is there every single play, every single snap, and that's why he's leading the country in pressures, leading the country in sacks, TFLs. Just the first step provides so many problems for opposing offensive tackles. I don't think he's necessarily the most NFL ready. I don't think I would expect him to come in and look like Nick Bosa did or Von Miller did right off the gate, but it'll happen at some point because of that physical ability. And that's kind of how I feel about Myles Murphy too. I think there's a big gap because of Will Anderson. We've already seen at the collegiate level, but Myles Murphy is, special athletically. He is like, to me, I think I've said this already, it's like Trayvon Walker and him are going to be testing-wise very similar, where he's 6'5", 275. I think that was Trayvon Walker size too. Going to have like 34-plus inch arms, going to run probably somewhere in the 4.5s, vertical jump high 30s. Like, that's the caliber. But like on a football field, you see it every snap with Myles Murphy. Like, you see that ability, you see the power. I think with Trayvon Walker, it would be like some reps, a lot of them oftentimes in coverage with Trayvon Walker, where you'd be like, oh, wow. But as a pass rusher, it wasn't the same suddenness, wasn't maybe the same urgency. But with a guy like Myles Murphy, you do see that. And it is very impressive to watch. It's just, he doesn't throw any pass rushing moves. Like, he won't even attempt pass rushing moves. I don't know what is going on in Clemson in the defensive line pipeline, but if they lost their D-line coach or something, but they were not developing those guys here recently.
I mean, it just felt like, because Brian Brzee is kind of the same way,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Brian Brzee, an unreal athlete on the interior for Clemson, and he felt like he was just taking up a lot of blocks, and he was a force. It's not like he's not out there making a difference, but him, Myles Murphy, it was almost just like, hey, dominate your gap or your 2 gaps or whatever you're responsible with, and keep the linebackers as clean as possible to go and make the tackles. Now, when you've got linebackers like Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and Trenton Simpson, okay, leaving those guys clean, you're probably going to get a lot of tackles and you're probably going to play defense well. So I understand it, but it is a little bit of a strange eval with how athletic those guys are, yet how much of a projection it feels like they still have. Tyree Wilson, we got to talk about him because people have mentioned Tyree Wilson as a potential top 10 overall pick. Do you see this guy this way? Do you see the NFL trending towards him being this way? And then is that justified from what you see? You've got him at number 4, so obviously he's still high on your rankings, but how do you see Tyree Wilson, and where would be a good spot you would think to draft him?
Yeah, I would draft him somewhere towards the back end of the top 10. I think he's that freakish, 85-inch wingspan. Truly a unique athlete in what he brings to the table. And as we said, there's a number of those in this edge class, but just a guy that has that and then has like the want to, right? You watch him on tape and there's no plays off for a guy that doesn't come off the field either. He's not like taking any loafing reps. He is attacking. He wants to go through you. He doesn't want to play, a soft game as a defensive end. Having that kind of length, oftentimes you can just be a guy that just holds the edge and kind of makes plays off of blocks. No, he wants to go through blocks when he's rushing the pass or when he's playing the run. So I think the mentality and the physical ability, like you see it coming on year after year with him, improved every single year from a grading perspective, that continues in the NFL. It's going to be a productive edge rusher.
Let's go to corners. And I'm excited to get to this one because you have a CB1 here who's not an unfamiliar name, but feels like an unfamiliar name as CB1 in this class. It's Devon Witherspoon, the cornerback from Illinois. At number 1 here on these rankings, you got Christian Gonzalez at 2, Cam Smith 3, Joey Porter Jr. at 4, and then Keely Ringo, a guy that a lot of people have as their CB1 in this class, as CB5. So tell me how this one all shakes out. Break down this cornerback class for me, but specifically at the top, what separates Witherspoon with him being the first name here?
Yeah, I went into his tape this year for the final postseason eval looking for reasons to not put him at cornerback 1 because his tape in 2021, his tape previously, prior to his senior season, was so kind of lackluster, just not up to the level that you would think, draftable, but nowhere near first round sort of caliber. And every single game, every single play, this guy was bringing it. And I was just like, after, I got about 2/3 of the way through his tape, and I'm like, this is it. Like, I don't know. I'm not really poking him at any holes in his game. 206 yards allowed all season, probably statistically the best season we've seen from a collegiate corner. He had, I believe, 150 snaps in press coverage this year and allowed 1 yard the entire season in press coverage.
What?
He did not get beaten in press coverage this season. And now he's not facing the slate of wide receivers that's somewhere. The Big Ten West is not known for producing, first-round caliber wideouts, sure. But my God, just flip on the Michigan tape from him going against Ronnie Bell, and I think he tracked Ronnie Bell even in that game, and just ate his lunch. It was impressive. The mentality is there of a CB1. The athletic tools are maybe not elite, but definitely I think he's going to run somewhere in the low 4. Like, he is fast, has the twitch, has that ability that I was, again, looking for reasons not to put him CB1 at the end of the day. After finishing all his tape, I'm just like, he's CB1. Maybe not a top 5 to 10 pick, but probably. But if you're going to draft him somewhere there, I don't think I'd argue because I think he's just going to be a damn good NFL player.
I love the topics of conversation that we're having here in the chat because we've got people who love Devon Witherspoon, of course, but we also have people who are like, nah, Christian Gonzalez is CB1. No, Joey Porter Jr. is CB1. Now Cam Smith is CB1. We have so many different opinions. Is it that close between these guys? With all of them for a potential CB1 spot?
I think it is, and it's in the eye of the beholder, right? It's cornerback's a position that has a lot of different skill sets that can win and is unique in that if you run one type of defense, you're looking for a completely different thing than if you run another type of defense. So I think if you are looking for, and again, certain schemes, you'll definitely have someone like Christian Gonzalez at CB1. Certain schemes, you'll probably have Keely Ringo as CB1. I think all these top 5 guys that we put up there on the list are probably going to be, if not should be, first-round picks. It's a very good cornerback class, in my opinion. No Sauce Gardner. I thought last year's cornerback class was unique, and then I thought guys like Trent McDuffie, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley Jr. were like high-end prospects you don't get every year, all 3 in the same class. Maybe I don't see a guy on any of their levels, but I think all 5 of these guys that I put in that list are first-round caliber.
I know a lot of people don't get many eyes on Christian Gonzalez just because he plays on the West Coast, and a lot of people just aren't up for West Coast games. Sometimes it's just not on TV. So just some thoughts on Christian Gonzalez, because a lot of people are caping for him in the chat. I know a lot of people like him, but there's not a ton of like nationally televised games that Oregon gets to play in that a lot of people watch. So what do you think about Christian Gonzalez?
Yeah, so he's 6'2", 200, and just smooth as can be at that. Like the the movement skills for a guy that size are rare. You don't see that every year. The ability to flip his hips and run with opposing wide receivers, I'm a big fan of that. It almost gives you a high floor when you can move the way he does at the cornerback position. I think he has great makeup speed as well. I don't think he's the most overly physical. Like I don't think, at that size, he could really beat up some wide receivers and really get physical. I don't think we see that enough from him. But I think you could maybe coach a little bit more of that into him. And I'm very high in him, too. That's why I was saying, it's tight here. I think between him and Witherspoon, they're both going to be somewhere in probably the 8 to 13 range on the final PFF draft board when it's all said and done. They're that caliber of prospects. After that, guys like Cam Smith, Joey Porter, Keely Ringo, probably more around the early 20s on the PFF draft board. So if there were a tier in this top 5, it would be those two and then the rest.
It just feels like there's a ton of depth in this class
for
corners. Just echoing what you said, maybe not as star-studded as last year's cornerback class was, but man, you can get a good corner, I feel like, in both rounds. Throughout the top 50, throughout the top 60.
Yeah. The one guy, so someone mentioned in the chat here, Clark Phillips, Utah corner. Going to have a lot of fans. I am worried about his size, though. 5'10", 183. And he makes a ton of plays on the ball, but you also see him just get tossed around too much on tape. That only happens more at the NFL level. So someone said he's the top 5 cornerback in this class, easy. I do think that he will be a good NFL player in a certain role. I just think he will be limited because that size it shows up so much on tape with him being, it's 5'10" to 183 is tough. Try to think of how many 5'10", 183 corners in the NFL right now. You'd even put in the top 20.
I was just going to say, what was Asante Samuel?
Asante Samuel Sr.?
No. What was Asante Samuel Jr. when he came out?
I think similar size, right?
Yeah, let me see. Mock draft.
But even he
was 5'11", 185.
Yeah. So
we thought Samuel was small.
And even him, we talked about it this year, not really having the year we had hoped in that defense, and now still he's a talented cornerback, but it just gets more difficult. And again, I go back to how many top 10 corners are that size in the NFL? It's not a lot. Not a lot of those guys get paid just because it is tough to handle the physicality of 6'4", 220-pound receivers when you're that size.
Last one, we're doing offensive tackles, all right? And there's so many teams in the NFL need offensive linemen, right? It's a position that's always going to be heavily coveted in the first round. It's one of those premier positions that you got to nail down. It is so important. You got Peter Skoronski at number 1 here on this ranking, the offensive tackle from Northwestern. I know there's a lot of versatility to his game. He could play a lot of different spots. Came in Northwestern as a center, and then he ended up going offensive tackle because of a need, and he's been absolutely locked down since then over the last 2 years. So he's number 1 on this list. Paris Johnson Jr., another guy with a ton of versatility from Ohio State, played right guard last year. Now he's playing left tackle, playing very well. Anton Harrison from Oklahoma at 3, Broderick Jones from Georgia at 4, and then Cody Mock from North Dakota State at number 5. Mike, where do you want to start off with this list? What name do you really want to talk about the most?
Yeah, Skoronski, I think he's the most NFL ready of this tackle class. I'm not certain he's going to be the best in 5 years. It actually, I'm not going to say it'd surprise me, but it would surprise me a little if one of those 3 names, whether it's Paris Johnson, Anton Harrison, Broderick Jones, after him, doesn't develop into maybe a little bit better of a tackle. But I know what I'm getting Peter Skoronski. He reminds me a lot of a stronger version of Jonah Williams coming out. And now maybe that's not what someone drafting him in the top 10, top 15 wants to hear. But Jonah Williams, until this season, I don't know what happened this season, was a quality above average starting tackle, above average pass protection. I think you're getting a little stronger of a guy at the offensive tackle position in Peter Skoronski. So getting a really high floor player. But then after that, it's the Paris Johnson, Anton Harrison, Broderick Jones. Those guys tick the boxes. Paris Johnson, the most, in my opinion, of those guys. I think Anton Harrison has play strength concerns. I don't think Broderick Jones is necessarily as nimble a mirror ability as the other 2 guys above him, Anton Harrison and Paris Johnson. But all of those guys, sort of have the size, strength, movement skills that the top tackles in the NFL have. They're all junior. They're all third-year guys coming out. I would honestly love if I was, realistically, now I know it's not going to happen because they're all going to get paid once they get to the NFL, and there's probably not too much money for OT NIL deals. But all 3 of those guys could use one more year and maybe play their way into top 10 picks easily. But as it stands right now, all I think would probably be in the first-round conversation.
What about Cody Mock from North Dakota State?
There's a tier.
Because the background's hilarious with him.
There's a clear tier there after those first 4, and then the 5th to Cody Mock, who's just he's a project. He's a unique projection because he's still undersized, even though he's gained 80 pounds since showing up as a walk-on tight end at North Dakota State. Gained 80 pounds and still probably could use 10 to 15 more in terms of muscle, even though he's a 6-year player coming out. But you can't coach his movement skills. That guy flies around the football field.
Dude, he's doing like cartwheels and stuff in the game. Like for like he's signaling first downs with like cartwheels and jumps and
it wouldn't surprise me if he does switch positions to even center in the league, just because athleticism at that position is more coveted. Yikes, my watch is answer my questions there. But it would not surprise me if something like that were to happen.
I think I actually don't hate that.
Yeah.
I actually don't hate that projection. He's offensive tackle right now. His run game's insane. He had an elite run blocking grade this past year. I think it was over 20% of his run blocking snaps were positively graded, which is really impressive. The pass blocking, not as good, but you get a lot of help in pass protection when you're playing on the interior, especially if you're playing center. That would be an interesting transition.
Good.
I don't hate that. I actually don't hate that. I don't hate that thought. All right, there we go. Yeah, hopefully, guys, you enjoyed that one. There's a lot of people who were giving Cody Mock some love. Some people wanted him on the Buffalo Bills at the end of the first round. Listen, long red hair, red beard, big dude, former tight end, gained 80 pounds, North Dakota State.
I mean, it feels like he should be a Viking, right?
What's not to love? Right. What's not to love? What's not to love? Thomas saying he's got Anton Harrison as OT2. I can understand that people are going to like Anton Harrison, especially the pass protection angle of it, because it just feels like he can mirror so well. He is so comfortable in pass protection in ways that a lot of these other guys just aren't. But the strength is somewhat of an issue of his game. I did see that as well. Brad says, didn't Landon Dickerson also do cartwheels? Did he do cartwheels on the field? I don't know if he did. I know he did them afterwards. I know he did them at the pro day. He was all over the place, but that's why. Landon Dickerson, great athlete, great interior offensive lineman. I love Landon Dickerson. So maybe I got to type. If you're an offensive lineman and you're athletic enough to do a cartwheel, maybe I'm just going to have you high in the rankings. Maybe that's just the way that it is. Drafting athletes that are big boys. You love to see it. All right, well, there we go. Top 5 at a lot of the premium positions that we have. Well done, Mike. That was good. I think the people enjoyed it. Does it feel good?
Fun.
You said at the top of the show you hadn't really been able to flesh out your takes. You feel good?
I did. That was probably the most I've talked on any show we've ever done.
I know.
That was great.
I know it was great. I didn't do shit on this show. I just kicked back and just kept going on it. You just, boom, went off. That makes my job a lot easier. I absolutely love it. Before we get out of here, we got to get the answer to the question of the day. How many times has Aaron Rodgers, as a full-time starting quarterback, which could be a trick question, Quinn says it's not.
If I got this wrong, I'll feel pretty embarrassed.
How many times has Aaron Rodgers, as a full-time quarterback, made the playoffs? So does this include if they win this weekend, Quinn?
Say it again.
Does this include if they win this weekend? With the number?
Yeah. Yes. So if they win this weekend.
Oh, it's if they win this weekend? Oh,
Yeah.
shit, it's 12 then. Sorry.
Yeah, you got it. So what I was.
Oh,
gonna
so it
say-
is 12?
Yeah, what I was good because you had the numbers right. It was like that. What's the Bible story where they're like trying to figure out how many fish they got to eat, and they all like keep forgetting to count themselves. That's pretty much what you did. You forgot
That
to
was
count
what I
fish.
did. I did not read the question well enough.
Yeah.
Rookie mistake, but now I got
There
12.
you go. Yeah, you got it.
There you go.
Now you got it.
12 out of 15, pretty good.
You got it in there before we got before we got our final answers in. So that's good. Walt says Trevor would look like a tiny Cody Mock if he let his hair grow and his beard grow out. Would I?
And knocked out your 2 front teeth.
I was gonna say, isn't he
Yeah.
like missing teeth? Isn't he like a hockey player?
I will say this about Cody Mock. Out of all those guys that you named, he will sell the most jerseys out of
Any
of those
O-linemen?
rookies.
Any O lineman that's drafted?
He moves the needle. Needle mover.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. There's a lot of like die-hard fans that are gonna be like, yeah, I'm getting a Cody Mock jersey. It's what it's all about. Like
He's
the
a
second
character.
that he gets to start. Yeah, I think so. Hurricane Dick at 55 says let Renner cook. Just wanted to let you know. That. Christian also
Love
said,
it.
good job, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
This is your time.
Hope you enjoyed.
This is your time of the year. Quell says, yeah, kind of, Trev. Look, come on. Brad also said Trevor looks topless
see
with
it.
his shirt at certain times.
And touch. That is fleshy.
I'm thinking it's summertime, guys. My mind's in a different place. I wish it was shirtless right now. Can't do the show shirtless. It's against FCC regulations.
Yeah.
But this is the next best thing.
That's why we don't curse on the show.
Summertime. Yeah, that's why we would never curse on the show. On this show, we would never do it. Do we have a chat chant for the day before we get out of here?
We do. It is Hurtis Russell. He had the probably all-time greatest chat moment where he said, Trevor is the roommate who labels his leftovers.
He doesn't.
Just an all-timer.
I know not to touch them.
I don't know how to feel, Hurtis. I don't know how to feel, but you're calling me organized, structured, a planner, and you know what? Damn it, I'll take it. As long as Mike doesn't eat my food. That's all I'm asking for. So shout out to Hurtis, who was our chat champ for the day. You get to represent the chat tomorrow, which is a big one. It's trivia, baby. We are getting down to the wire. It is 5-5. The stakes, quite literally, could not be higher for trivia. 5 wins on the desk, 5 wins in the chat. Y'all better be there for it because this is the ultimate tiebreaker. I don't know if this is going to be the last trivia. I haven't been told that, but it might be. And I'm going to tease the show like that to make sure that you guys showed up too. So shout out to Hurtis. Shout out to everybody else who watched the show today. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Mike Renner. For everybody in the production portal, this is It's Just Football. We'll see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow. See you guys then.
It's not about politics. It's about football.
This is a simple game.
We're going to run the ball, and we're going to pass the ball. He's just going to play football, really.
How good of a football player are you?
Not just get it and try to spin it. That's all.
I just love the game.
It really is the best time of the year.